Welcome back to another episode of the Tracy Take. Today we are talking about the Washington football team. And before we get into the episode, I just want to go ahead and say, if you have not already, please hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it over here. And if you don't mind hitting that bell notification for the YouTube algorithm, that would be great as well. At the end of the episode, if you like what we said, go ahead and put it in the comments. If you disliked what we said, put it down there too. But let's go ahead and get right into it. I really like the Washington football team. They are my favorite team in this division. I think that they have the most talent on both sides of the ball, and I'm excited to see it. I think this defense has gotten better, which is kind of scary. I think Montez Sweat and Chase Young are only going to improve as their young careers progress.
Oh yeah. 16 and a half sacks apiece between the two of them last year. Oh yeah, that's just insane.
Yeah, and that was a second year guy and a rookie, if I'm not mistaken. And so then they added Jamin Davis through the draft, Bobby McLean, and William Jackson as well to kind of bolster up some of that secondary and linebacker core. And it's kind of scary to think about. Like, they were a top 5 defense last year, and like they got better. They seriously improved. And so that for me is the biggest thing for the Washington football team, is that their already top 5 defense got like, not even just like they added this guy, that guy. They're much better.
Well, and it's so strong. It can honestly win them games, because if their offense can just be average, which I absolutely think that they can be. They have the pieces in place to at least be average. But you're looking at their division. All they need to do to make the playoffs is do what they did last year and win the division, which was easier said than done, obviously. But you're going up against 2 games against the Giants, who we've already discussed, and they're going to have some serious issues on the offensive side of the ball with a very weak offensive line. Same thing with Philadelphia, except their offensive line is a little bit better, but they don't have the weapons that some of the other teams have. So that's going to be a big question mark as well. Also, with Jalen Hurts going to be his second year, first year as a full-time starter. So this defense in this division can win them division games, get them ahead, and already on the right track to winning the division. So
I was going to say, I think the offensive line for Washington is actually not going to be horrible. I think they have just a bunch of good pieces that are going to develop. I know they drafted Samuel Cosmi this year in the draft. And so I think that they're just going to have a probably fairly average, maybe a slightly above average offensive line, but their offensive line seems to be pretty young, and it will develop and hopefully improve as long as they can stay healthy throughout the season. So I am really excited to watch this team play, because I think they're a young team that's led by a quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I know some people are like, oh, but it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. You don't really know what you're going to get. And you kind of said that to me before the show. But if you look at what they did last year, they went 7-9 with Alex Smith, Taylor Heineke, I think Dwayne Haskins at one point.
Dwayne Haskins played a couple games, they
had just a whole slew of quarterbacks. And the quarterback play was not good for 95% of it. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, even as inconsistent as he plays, I think will actually add some level of consistency to that position. So I think it's a positive outlook for the offense.
Well, and that's the thing, what Alex Smith was able to bring when he started play was just the consistency, not the highest of highs and then the lowest of lows that Dwayne Haskins was providing at the quarterback position. He's just a very steady, knows his role, game manager, not going to make too many mistakes. And I feel like Ryan Fitzpatrick is in a similar realm, in a similar ballpark of skill as Alex Smith. So that's kind of what they're getting from him. Was he the sexiest offseason signing by no means, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And also, I'm very curious to just kind of see. I wouldn't say it's a QB battle, but Washington did invest in Taylor Heineke. Curious to see kind of how that unfolds in the offseason. And maybe they will have a similar role with kind of set up with Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe the quarterback that might be best suited against said defense for that week might get the nod, and it might go back and forth. That's a theory. I haven't seen any reports on that, but something to keep an eye on. Because Taylor Heineke obviously has got the heart of a champion. He lays it all out there, as we all saw against the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Interesting to watch. But that being said, the quarterback position is not going to be the key role. I think. The key skills, the key skill position on that offense. Yeah. For me, I'm looking right at the number one wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, who I didn't realize this had over 1,000 yards last year. 1,100.
He's had over 1,000 yards his first 3 seasons.
I know, very under the radar, or maybe I'm just blind or something, or just wasn't paying attention. But one thing I think that at least having a consistent quarterback can have will be his upgrade in receiving touchdowns. He only had 4 touchdowns last year. Hopefully he can get up to maybe 8, 9, 10 or something like that. And I think if you can have a solid quarterback play, those touchdowns will come because he's clearly the number 1 guy. But they did also get a potential number 2 guy over from Carolina, Curtis Samuel, who had 851 yards last year and 3 touchdowns, which a pretty good year, I would say, all things considered, coming from Carolina. So
and they also added a guy, Dyami Brown, through the draft, who's a little bit more of just like kind of a vertical threat, but definitely a young receiver that can make an impact. And then I also think Logan Thomas is probably a slightly underrated tight end. I know there were a lot of people that expected the Washington football team to go after a tight end in free agency or the draft, but I think that they are going to ride with Logan Thomas and kind of see his development. But I mean, if he can come out and get 30, 40 catches for 300-400 yards and 4 to 7, 8 touchdowns, I think that's more than successful and more than what they would need to get out of him with that wide receiving core. And we haven't even mentioned Antonio Gibson coming out of the backfield yet. Who's going into his 2nd season. So,
I would just say going back to Logan Thomas, he almost had 700 yards last year. So I think he can easily. I think he can easily repeat that production. Which honestly, then, if we're talking about that receiving core setup, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Dyami Brown in the slot, and then you got Logan Thomas as well, then Antonio Gibson in the backfield, or J.D. McKissick, who's more the receiving running back. You got a lot of options. You got a lot of options on this offense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And which is kind of scary to think that they have actually paired a somewhat formidable offense with that defense, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I do want to go ahead and get into like their schedule really quick, and we can talk about some of their matchups. So I do have them winning this division at 7-10. I think 7-10 might actually kind of be like their floor.
Yeah.
I think this team is by far the most talented and most ready to win this division. But they do start out a little tough. They have to play the Chargers in week 1. And we do think the Chargers are going to be pretty good this year. And then they have, in my opinion, an easy week. The New York Giants at home in week 2. But then they have to go to Buffalo, to Atlanta, and then they play the Saints. They'll probably end up winning that game. But then they have to play Kansas City, Green Bay, then Denver, and then Tampa Bay, which is a pretty tough first 10 weeks. They have a bye week in week 9. But that's pretty tough.
Well, I would say I'm looking at this now. I think they're going to win the games that they should win. I think they're going to lose the games where the teams are clearly better than them, like the Chargers, Buffalo, Tampa, Kansas City. But I'm looking at these games here as some of the other losses. Like you have them with 2 division losses, highly possible. You know, it's division rivalries, potential playoff implication on the line, especially in these later weeks. But I'm looking at Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans. Those are going to be 3 toss-up games for them. I think that's going to be the difference between them having a winning record and then having a losing record. Because obviously, if they win those 3 games, they're 10-7, and potentially not even just the 4th seed, potentially even the 3 seed.
Yeah, and I also think this Washington at Denver game is a toss-up as well here in Week 8, just because I think both of those defenses are going to be – I mean, that's going to be the least entertaining football game ever, but both of those defenses are going to put on a show. So I also have them doing pretty well in the second half of the season. They have a lot more division games, but then they also play Seattle, Las Vegas. And then I have them losing here in Week 18 just because I think that their division is already going to be won at this point. I don't think the other teams are really going to be competitive, and I think they're just going to kind of scrap it. So, kind of get somewhat of a bye week going into the playoffs. But, again, I think 7-10 is the floor for this team, which is kind of – especially in today's NFL, it is weird to say about a team that does not have that strong of an offense. But I think this offense is very much improved from last year, and I think so is the defense. And they won the division last year anyway, so
I would say just the one thing to watch will be just how the offensive line develops. There's a couple holes that they're trying to find the starters for. We already mentioned Samuel Cosme in the right tackle spot, but also in the left guard position, there's going to be a battle between the starter last year, Wes Schweitzer, former Falcons guy, and then also Eric Flowers, who they brought over as well, and free agency from Miami. So similar, though, to kind of what we were talking about with the Giants, is that this offensive line can be average and provide time for Ryan Fitzpatrick to, I guess, to read defenses, to be able to create holes for Antonio Gibson. This team's going to be dangerous. I mean, because this defense is absolutely elite. They can they're only getting better with experience, especially that front line, as we talked about. So just the biggest question mark for me, I would say, would be the offensive line for this team going into the season.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, I mean, this is not a team that I would want to play, especially not a team that I want to go to play first week of the playoffs in early mid-January. So
So it's going to be a fun team to watch. I do have them. I would bet on them to be the division winner. I think the Cowboys are kind of holding their own destiny. I think they're the better team talent-wise, but really only time will tell. But thanks for making it this far and listening to our episode of the Washington football team season preview. We do have the other episodes out of the NFC East, and so if you want to go check those out and hear our thoughts, absolutely please go down and click on those videos. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and good luck this season, Washington football team.